let's go to implementation pattern and best practices. Number one, event-driven and async by design. So architect your AI workflows to be asynchronous and event-driven wherever possible. So don't make agents wait on long HTTP calls in a user request cycle. Instead, use background workers, task queues, or streaming events. And this decoupling avoids cascading failure. So if one part is slow, it won't block everything else, right? Because it's async. A pattern is to have an orchestrator component, could be one of the agents, or a service like Azure Durable Functions that kicks off tasks and listens for results via events, right? This approach also aligns with how human processes work, right? They're naturally async and multi-step, by the way. Best practice, define clear event topics, events or event types or topics or the place. You have topics in service bus architecture, you have topics in Kafka that agents and services would actually publish or subscribe to. Then it should be modular decouple components. So treat each AI agent or AI service as a modular microservice agent in so that I told you, like it's a hybrid backend versus AI agents as separate services. So don't create one giant AI monolith where all the different AI agents would, let's say, be talking to each other, like one database, one service with all the different agents, one code base. No, that tries to do everything. Instead, have specialized agents, text summarizers, data extractor, decision engine that communicate with each other in a loosely coupled way. Leverage DevOps and MLOps practices. So deploy and manage AI services with the same rigor you apply to traditional services. So containerize your agents in a Docker container and use container orchestration like Docker Swarm, Kubernetes for scaling and resilience, and implement CI/CD pipelines for your AI components so you can update prompts and models reliably. Additionally, MLOps principles, very important. Go read LLM Ops and how MLflow is doing it. Version your models and prompts, monitor model performance, and have a rollback strategy if an AI component starts misbehaving. For example, treat a prompt file or chain config as code, changes go through code review and test before production. Start with clear use cases. Please be iterative, go slow. So it's tempting to think of many possibility for AI agent, but in practice, success comes from focusing on well-defined, high-value use cases first. That's very important. Identify a specific workflow that is a good candidate for intelligent automation. For example, automate FAQ responses or extract data from resumes. Build a single-purpose agent for that, get it working end-to-end, and measure the impact. This avoids the pitfall of deploying AI for AI's sake. Remember that. Don't do AI do it for business value. In fact, one common failure is building agents without a clear business purpose, leading to very low adoption. So by starting small, you can also help your team learn and build trust in the system, which you can leverage for broader projects. And performance optimization, very important that AI agents can introduce new performance consideration. So, LLM calls might be slower than typical API response, for example. So best practices here is you can use caching for repeated queries, like memorize results if the same question is asked often, streamline prompt sizes. So don't feed the model more info than necessary, and consider hybrid local models for speed. A smaller on-prem model for simple tasks versus calling a large cloud for complex ones. If you do it for, let's say a simpler small LLM, why not? Also design fallbacks, which is very important in agentic AI, that if the AI agent is taking too long, have a default response or gracefully degrade to a simpler pipeline. In a sense, treat the AI part as you would an external dependency with timeouts, fallbacks, and circuit breakers to keep the overall system responsive. What does the future outlook look like? Because are we ready? It's important to see what's going to happen. In the coming years, you'd expect a proliferation of agents handling various business functions. So architectures might evolve to support multi-agent ecosystems at a larger scale, with a dozen or hundreds of agents collaborating. Very important, future-proof, please. This could introduce an agent orchestration layer, that the AI service layer we're talking about, in our architecture that coordinates complex sequences among many agents. So we may see hierarchy. Some agents specialize in planning and others in execution, all within the same system. So designing, communication protocols and standards for agent-to-agent interaction will become important to avoid chaos as agent ground goes. Just as microservices led to standard patterns, 12-factor apps, RESTful APIs, agentic architectures will likely converge on best practices. So we can anticipate more frameworks and platforms that extract the complexity, right? For example, cloud providers might offer agent orchestration as a service, or we'll have standard agent registries and discovery, analogous to service registries. Open standards could emerge for how agents represent knowledge or communicate perhaps an evolution of something like the OpenAI function calling spec to a more general agent API. So this will make it easier to plug new agents into an existing ecosystem, much like, just like you plug in new microservices today in a microservices architecture, right? And it's important to understand that, we're currently early adopters 2025, building pilot projects with Agentic AI. By around 2027, we expect like much wider enterprise adoption. This means if you start now, you can gain a competitive advantage and nurture your approach by the time it's mainstream. So you anticipate that as success stories proliferate, like one company cuts processing time by 90% with AI agents, others will quickly follow. So analysts' predictions show Agentic AI moving from hype to must-have in a few years, because it's not going to be an option, guys. It's going to be a requirement, because it is disrupting a lot of the business process. Like, you're saving costs, you're automating process. Why not? So, and this is similar to how when, the cloud came into being, right? It actually is now not an option. Like, it's a requirement. Like, a lot of companies have to adopt the cloud. Yes, a lot of, specifically in GovTech, there's a lot of, preference given to on-prem, but you will see how things change, right? Projected by 2026, 70% of enterprise will allocate a portion of their AI budget to AI agents development integration. And I think I mentioned this before as well, 50% of enterprise utilizing AI in their operations by 2027. That is huge, right? So the bottom line is the architecture we discussed, hybrid backend plus, agentic services, is not a temporary trend, but a foundation that will keep evolving. Much like microservices evolved with service meshes and more sophisticated, DevOps agent-based systems will get their equivalent, like agent meshes, if you will. Like, imagine having agent meshes, right? The key takeaway for the future is, guys, flexibility. So by designing your architecture modularly now, you'll be able to plug in new AI capabilities, swap out models, and scale up autonomy as the technology and your confidence in it grows. The companies that succeed will be those who thoughtfully combine human and agent intelligence, maintain governance, and iterate quickly as this field matures. And last but not the least, imagine by 2030, the projected size of the AI agent market is going to be $47.1 billion, growing at a CAGR of 44.8%. Thank you. Questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
So you said the best practice is to have modular AI agents not communicating with one database.
Mm-hmm.
Is this because of a security reason?
I think not security is one aspect, but not even security. Like, imagine multiple AI agents talking to the same database, right? And one code base having multiple AI agents logic would essentially choke the system, because AI agents work more or better in an event-driven way. Imagine this as a communication, in an async communication in a team. As to, I refer to this as well. Like, let's say you're working in Squad, and a lot of times you guys are communicating with either async and human A to human B, human B to C. The problem is that if you're relying on one service, one giant AI agent service, it will fail, right? Number one. Number two, monitoring and logging of each agent has to be incorporated at an agent level. Now, the problem is, you could say you could do it in one giant modular approach, but the problem is that troubleshooting would become a pain, and tracing AI requests when it comes to fulfilling a business workflow will be a pain, right? So the best practice is, divide it, like, take a microservices approach for AI agents to
Right.
actually make it easier for you to troubleshoot. Number two, to fulfill business workflows and reduce failures, right? Because it is a lot. Let's say, imagine, like, you're fulfilling like 20,000 requests for document extraction per day, right? And doing it in one giant, and then let's say you have other AI agents as well who are processing 50,000 requests, right? In a real world scenario, you could do it, but not a best practice, right? So that's I hope that answers your question.
Yes, yeah. Thanks a lot. You also mentioned about agent mesh, right? So
Yeah.
it means that there are multiple agents working together on one problem and they can communicate with each other. Is that correct interpretation?
Yes, I think yes, but that's a concept I have, like, it's not here, but it is just was a reference that just like we have service mesh, we could have agent mesh. But right now,
Oh,
yeah, we do
right,
have
right.
similar examples where, let's say, yeah. So service, you could have agent mesh coming up, and that's like a more of a prediction, right? Where this could become a very common term and implementation methodology.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you very much. No more questions.
Thanks. Questions? I think I can look at the chat. Great. I don't think we have any questions, but please feel free to, give us feedback. I'd love
Can
to.
I, sorry about that. Can I ask him one more question?
Sure.
It's a bit lame question, but I think this security concern is in a lot of stakeholders' mind. So, what if we have ML flow deployed that is monitoring the and auditing the LLM, right? So, what if can LLM sort of create its own input and show it to us via LLM?
Honin, can you, you broke off in the end. Can you come again, like the last part?
Right? Am I audible now?
Yes, last part
Yeah. So,
only.
yeah, I
Yeah.
wanted to know if LLM can enter its own custom input into ML flow, which is connected with it for auditing and monitoring.
Its own input, like
Yep.
custom.
Yeah, sort of like uh, it's a security question. For instance, I have deployed an ML flow that is monitoring and auditing
I get it. If you're talking about, so there's a concept called LLM as a judge, right?
with the ML flow.
I think you were breaking off, Hamza. Now I can hear you. Yeah. Okay. Hello.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to know if the ML flow deployed and connected with an LLM, can that LLM interfere with the information shown on the ML flow?
That LLM can definitely interfere in a bad way from a security
Yes, yes, yes.
point. I don't think
Yep.
so. If you've implemented ML flow within your existing LLM code to log at a specific step, log XYZ, why would it, like, there's a specific way of using ML flow in your LLM ops workflow. So my answer here is, why would it do it on its own when you've not asked for it? The other perspective to this is LLM as a judge, where an LLM is deployed to judge and evaluate the response of an LLM. Imagine LLM monitoring an LLM, right? So I think, but that's a different concept. But LLM just doing monitoring, like doing something on its own to ML flow without us triggering it or without us mentioning the logging in specific steps of our code, I don't think that would happen.
Right. So it means that I can use ML flow if I'm not trusting the LLM on that level. That
So
ML flow can
ML flow
help
is
me build that.
basically, yeah, it's more logging, and it's
Yeah.
more logging plus tracing, some of tracing, right? But very important for evaluating your LLM output, where ML flow would be very helpful, right? How well are you doing on your accuracy of response, and if your LLM response is not hallucinating? That's where ML flow we would give you a very good idea. And you can have like custom metrics incorporated within ML flow to monitor your LLM output.
Right. Also, most of the time, LLMs are working with different types of data, right?
Mhm.
And the data needs to be secure. You did mention the PDF LLM that can parse a PDF. A PDF can have a medical receipt as well, which needs to be secure. So, do
Mhm.
you think that LLMs are secure enough to parse that PDF? and not exploit the information?
I think I mentioned this earlier as well, like masking PII is helpful. PII is personally identifiable information. So you can mask it and then pass it to the LLM, right? Or you could host the LLM on premise and process personal, like important information, right? And that's definitely possible, right? If you look at a lot of the medical science and medical health world, there's a lot of, IP involved, a lot of sensitive data involved. LLMs are also being used there. It depends how you're using them. And a lot of companies are now either using LLMs hosted within a virtual private cloud or let's say virtual network on, let's say, Azure OpenAI service, AWS Bedrock, right?
Right.
Or on premise. So the point here is, and if you, so that does, let's say from a security standpoint, the only security threat you'd have is the same security threat you have in your operational databases. That is the security threat you could have on your LLMs as well if they're hosted within your virtual private cloud. If you're taking like good, like you're using threat protection frameworks, and let's available within AWS, Azure, GCP. This should not be a problem. And the best way to actually make sure that your data is as secure as possible, and you're very particular about data privacy, deploy LLMs on premise. But that's where the hardware issue comes in. Well, a lot of companies are not able to afford expensive hardware because of lack of GPUs. So it's a conversation which is taking place, but then a lot of the companies who have good budgets and can afford it are doing it. And you should look at, if let's say you are okay with using the cloud, look at what GCP is doing with the serverless machines and how cheap is it, where they're providing GPUs in serverless environment to help companies run agentic AI workflows in a very cheap manner. Okay. So yeah, if that answers your question. So
Thanks a lot. That did
Aditi
answer my
had a
question.
question. There's a lot of hype around agentic AI. There's an opinion and out there that most of it is just a hype and won't materialize in promised ROI. What are your thoughts about the practical use of agentic AI, like you've explained? I think it's a very good question. If we go back like 10, 20 years, 10, 15 years, actually 10 years, like, there was cloud and then we saw a lot of different AI, ML technologies and frameworks coming in. The question of hype was there and is still there. But how well do you define your business problem and how well do you actually quantify that this problem, if solved through this technique or this model, can help me save X? Now, the problem is monitoring. A lot of the companies could not get a lot of ROI from AI because either they did not implement it well, or they did not solve the right business problem the right way, right? So in order for you to ensure that you're getting ROI from agentic AI, generative AI, it's important to first get the business problem right, the solution right, and your ROI monitoring mechanism right, right? If something is not helping your business, just give it up. And a very important way to demonstrate this is a proof of concept, right? So proof of concept helps you understand that, okay, this is not hype. This is actually working for my business. If let's say you automate a workflow of PDF extraction and your objective is to save 20 man hours in a month, and let's say if you're monitoring this and you actually end up saving 15, that's pure ROI and not hype anymore. The problem would arise when you don't have an ROI metric, you're not monitoring, you're not doing in a phase-wise approach, you're not doing a POC, and essentially end up building an end-to-end system for 3 months and realize that, oh, I solved the wrong problem, or I did not actually solve it the right way using the right tools or mechanisms or frameworks. So, and also a lot of times people would debate, let's do AI for everything. AI is not the answer for everything. Yes, AI is powerful. AI is not hype. It's real. It gives you ROI. There are a lot of studies out there, right? Lots and lots of studies on reduce cost, increase revenue to different AI technologies. But a lot of times you sometimes don't need AI, and actually a simple process automation will solve your problem. So that's also important to understand that don't do AI for the sake of AI. Do AI for business value and make sure you need AI to solve a specific problem, right? So an agentic AI is actually going to be a compulsion by 2026 and not an option, because a lot of companies would see on their right and their left and see a lot of companies saving X amount of dollars per month through different agentic AI workflows, or an increase of, let's say, X% in the revenue. You would have to adopt agentic AI workflows to make sure that you're at par with number one competition and you're actually future proofing yourself, and you are growing with the market, and you are not going out of the market. So companies, I believe, who will not adopt agentic AI or general, let's say, AI for the sake of it, like in the next 2 years will be out of business. That is my clear, like, more my opinion. You will see that startups, enterprise, this applies to everyone. 2 years down the line, if you're not using AI for any of your workflows, because for a fact, you do need AI in your business. It's just that what needs AI and what doesn't need AI. That's the question you need to ask, right? So I think good luck, and I hope this was helpful. So long answer to your question, Adil, but it's important to make sure that you guys understand this. And I know it's not too straightforward. It gets a bit complicated sometimes for specifically business users who are trying to incorporate AI into their existing workflows. But if you do it the right way, imagine that you would be, like literally on the bandwagon to 10x growth in no time. Thank you for your time. And any other questions before I sign off? No. Thank you, guys. I hope you like this, and I hope it's helpful. Thank you so much.